You're listening to a Monster Kid podcast.
Hi and welcome to A Dingo Ate My Movie, a podcast that features classic Ozploitation and other weird, wonderful, overlooked and underappreciated Australian films from the 70s, 80s and beyond. My name is Pete and I'm your host.
The Night Rider. That is his name. The Night Rider. Remember him when you look at the night sky.
Welcome to A Dingo Ate My Movie, a podcast about weird and wonderful Australian films from the 70s, 80s and beyond. I'm your host, Pete, and today I'm joined by Brandon Hardy to discuss Talk to Me from 2022. Good morning, Brandon.
Hello, Pete. It's great to see you again and to be back on the show.
It's been a long time. I was just looking at, last thing we did together was BMX Bandits back in 2022, so it's been over a year. It's been a while.
Yeah, I didn't realize it had been that long. But
all right, so today we're here to talk about Talk to Me. It's really strange how it's hard to say we're here to talk about Talk to Me. It just sounds weird.
Oh, yeah. Talk to me about Talk to Me.
Talk to me about Talk. And it's interesting, I say wonderful Australian films from the 70s, 80s and beyond. Well, this is definitely beyond anything I've done. This is like a movie that's basically a year old.
Yeah.
So I've never done one this recent. So yeah. So I'll go through the synopsis, and I pinched the synopsis from IMDb because I'm lazy. And the synopsis is: when a group of friends discover how to conjure spirits using an embalmed hand, they become hooked on the new thrill until one of them goes too far and unleashes terrifying supernatural forces. Pretty much sums it up. I like the IMDb synopsis. Some of them are very good and very straight up.
Yeah, I like succinct and to the point without giving too much away.
That's why I pinch them and don't write my own.
Yeah.
The movie is directed by brothers Danny and Michael Philippou, and it stars Sophie Wilde as Mia, Alexandra Jensen as Jade, Joe Bird as Riley, Miranda Otto as Sue. And it was written by Danny Philippou and Bill Hinsman on a concept created by Daley Pearson. The cast is fantastic. I really enjoyed the cast in this movie. I didn't list them all because there's a lot of them.
No, I like the cast too.
Yeah, I think it's one of the things that makes this movie really work. The movie premiered at the Adelaide Film Festival in October 2022 and was initially released by Umbrella Entertainment, Marslow Entertainment, and Ahi Films on July 27, 2023. It was shown at Cannes Film Festival or Cannes Film Festival in 2022, and then it was sold to several international distributors. And it had its international premiere at Sundance Film Festival in 2023. Shortly after that, there was a number of American distributors that were engaged in a bit of a bidding war for the film, and A24 eventually secured the rights. And it's very much a A24 kind of film, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that was certainly, that's what got people in the theater, was that A24 banner. And of course, the hype built around that. What I think at the time they were saying, "Oh, this is the scariest movie of the year."
Yeah, but they say that a lot with movies these days.
I know. Yeah, sure, whatever.
Unfortunately, that's the story, right? You should hear it and we'll talk about that a bit later. I've got it as one of my talking points about hype, but yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. It was budgeted at $4.5 million and it made $92 million at the box office, which is a nice little return on investment, I think.
Yeah, I think it's A24's most profitable film they've made so far.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Its ratings on IMDb, it's rated as 7.1 out of 10, which is quite high. Rotten Tomatoes certified fresh with 95% critic score and an 82% audience score. And on Letterboxd, it's a 3.6 out of 5. So it's pretty well liked movie. It's I don't see too many people talking down about it. I noticed when I was flicking around on YouTube looking for, just bits to watch and people reviewing it and people talking about it, there was a couple of videos about how it's not a great movie and all this sort of stuff. And I watched bits of that as well. And some of them make some decent points, but I think overall it's a pretty popular film. This movie is basically directed by two guys that had a YouTube channel, which is quite interesting. Danny and Michael Philippou are well known for their YouTube channel, Raka Raka, which is a really interesting name. Yeah. I was trying to work out how would you come up with that name? What the hell does it mean? But I didn't.
Yeah, I was hoping you would have some insight.
No. As of this recording, has 6.8 million subscribers, so it's a nice subscriber base. Wow. The channel's known for its over-the-top action, dark humor, and special effects. They initially gained fame through videos featuring Ronald McDonald in various bizarre and violent scenarios. I watched a couple of those. I don't know if you bothered to watch a couple of them.
I saw a few clips that they played during an interview, and I'll have to watch them later.
And they're really violent and bizarre. And then there's because I thought, okay, to get an understanding of these guys, I'll just flick through, watch a couple of the videos because most of them are short. There's a lot of like 1 minute, 2 minute videos sort of things on there. And I thought I'll watch some of these. The Ronald McDonald ones are really bizarre. And I'm like, I don't know how they got away with it. But
I'll have to look those up.
And then later on, I was watching one of their later videos and I think they were talking about the fact that the last video that they had released, basically YouTube's algorithm buried it because of the fact that it was so not right.
Okay.
So, yeah. So I don't think there's been a video put up there since a couple of years ago. Probably when this movie came out. I think there was a video I sent you, and I think that's almost the last one that came out. And I don't think there's been any movement on there for a year or two, and with good reason. I'd say they're kind of, got bigger fish to fry at the moment. So.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, but it seemed like, from that clip that that video that you'd sent me, it seemed like that their video channel on YouTube was essentially like them experimenting and kind of cutting their teeth on like using effects, using sound design, using techniques to engage people in a short form. And so you can definitely see, or I can imagine you could see like their progression and their ability to do a lot with less, and especially making this film for $4.5 million. I mean, certainly it's a good mark of a good filmmaker is economy. And even the film itself is like an hour, 35 minutes, it's pretty tight.
You can definitely see where it's all come from because like some of the videos on there's wire work involved and there's, makeup effects. And I was listening to the commentary for this film the other night, and one of the people that I can't remember what her name was exactly, who was doing visual and makeup effects with them on Raka Raka, ended up doing makeup effects in Talk to Me. It was the main makeup effects.
Oh, that's cool.
Which is amazing, right? So I think they brought a few people across with them. So yeah, you can definitely see the progression. So according to the two brothers, while in pre-production, there was a lot of interest from large American production companies. They didn't name who they were, but once they started apparently to understand that they wanted them to use an American cast and change things in the film and make it more, I guess, commercial, they decided to not go ahead with that, and they funded the film locally. Much of the funding comes from Screen Australia, the South Australian Film Corporation, and the Adelaide Film Festival Investment Fund. There's another couple of production companies, Headgear Films, Metrol Technology, and Causeway Films. Causeway Films is familiar with people who have listened to this podcast and have an interest in the Babadook, since they were one of the producers of the Babadook back in 2014. So they have a bit of form with this. But it's kind of nice to see, creators that were courted effectively by the big studio system, inverted commas, kind of reject that and decide that they wanted to, make the film they wanted to make, which doesn't happen a lot these days. Or it starts out that way and then the second film ends up being, overproduced, for want of a better term, I guess.
Right.
I guess we'll find out with these guys because there's a sequel to this film coming up.
Oh, interesting.
Anyway, so they're shooting a prequel, which I assume is going to kind of maybe end where this one starts. When we get into
I hope it's not like an origin story. Like, this is how the hand came to be, like who the hand belongs to, if it is indeed a real person's hand, all of that. Like, I think that's why it works so well, is the mystique, the mystery around its origin, and like even though some time is spent talking about the rules, how this works, like 90 seconds is the hard limit and things like that people have figured out, but it has all this lore around it, and no one really knows kind of where it came from and what its purpose was. And so I like that, and I hope that they don't reveal too much, I guess.
So you don't want like talk to me origins. So
exactly.
Yeah, same. I think one of the things that I loved about this film is they didn't spoon feed the audience. And they purposely kept things out of the film that they'd filmed because either A, it was too drama-ish, or B, they just wanted to have that mystique. They didn't really show a lot. They didn't talk about where the thing came from, where the hand came from, where things
right. Like that. And so that would have taken at least another 10 minutes, because most films will have a scene where people are doing research, they're Googling things, or they're in a library somewhere looking at microfilms, and so this is who this belongs to. This is the history of all of this. This is how this hand came to be, and it's magic, explaining everything. And I'm so glad we didn't get any of that in this film.
Yeah, I loved it. I love the fact that the hand just seems to go to different people at different times, and we'll go into that a bit later. Especially the end. Mm-hmm. So it's really interesting, and I think they did a great job doing that. So I watched this on a Blu-ray. So last year, Umbrella released Blu-ray and a 4K and a couple of collector's editions of this film, obviously, because I think they're one of the production partners, so it's a big deal to them. One of the editions, the Let Me In edition, has a full-size replica of the hand from the movie. And quite amazingly, as of today's date, the recording day, it's still available if you have $160 to spend. It's kind of tempting.
Is that the one that, I think I've seen this, it's like the hand also is like a bong or something, or like you can smoke out of it?
I don't think so.
Like that. I think maybe I think I'm thinking of like A24
might have
has
released
a replica hand that you can smoke out of.
Oh wait. Well, as we'll talk about, there's parallels between drug use and hand use in this.
Right. So, tobacco use only.
Yeah, exactly. For sure. So they have that. You can also watch this on Netflix in Australia, and you can buy it on Apple, Amazon, and other digital platforms. Like, if you want to risk that, I don't really advocate buying digitally anymore, but I guess that's a discussion for another day. I mean, I'm not keen on things and hearing things like, what's the famous one I heard about a few months ago, how they changed bits of the French Connection on Disney Plus.
Oh, right. Yeah, I heard that. And I bought it that same day on Blu-ray.
Right. Good time. Worked out well. Yeah, so that's why, I don't I don't really buy. I've got some digital movies, but they're nothing special. But
Yeah,
I don't buy them anymore because you could just lose access to them as well.
right. Yeah, I think the only digital ones that I have are either were redeemed through codes that came with the disc, or like on Apple TV, maybe this one was on sale one day, and I was like,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
well, that's cheaper than the rental, so I'll
yeah.
buy that.
Oh, yeah. For that reason, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm just not a fan of that sort of thing. And also noticed with digital games lately, playing digital games, is that they just remove them from the store after a period of time when they don't sell and stuff like that, and then everything's got to be digital, and I don't think it's a great idea.
Yeah, I agree. I watched this movie here in the States on Paramount Plus. That's where it's at currently.
Before we start talking about the movie as such, we're definitely going to spoil this movie. It's really important that if you don't want it spoiled, please go and watch it before you listen to the discussion, because there's some major spoilers in this film, and especially the ending. So if you want to keep listening, do it at your own risk, I guess. So, yeah. So what were your initial thoughts on the film, Brandon?
I'm going to preface this with a short story.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to see the Evil Dead, the 2013 film, when it came out. And on opening night, it was a midnight screening, packed house. I'm there with a friend and his date. We'll call the date Andrea. So she mentions having a headache on the way there. And then about 20 minutes into the film, she leaves. And all of a sudden, there's murmuring, then shouting, and the lights come on in the theater, and the movie stops. And people are running over to look over this partition between the auditorium and this little corridor that runs alongside it. And Andrea has passed out in this corridor. And instead of anyone running to help her, this crowded theater takes out their phones and starts recording her lying there on the floor. And someone eventually helps her, and the movie starts back up a bit later. But that moment is stuck with me. Just that image of dozens of phone screens and flashlights, and that poor girl lying motionless on a dirty theater carpeted hallway. And 10 years later, I thought about that when I first saw this film, because the thing that this film does really well is it depicts like real young people in a way that like it accurately reflects like what they do and how they engage with the world. But it also comments on this idea of spectatorship in an age of social media and influencer culture and smartphone dependence, and just like that being the smartphone and the camera being kind of this buffer between a person and the world. And I'll say my thoughts more on that stuff later, but that's what I was thinking about when I saw it, and that's what stuck with me. But when I saw the film, we'll talk about the hype factor, but this movie was really hyped up here, and I was expecting to be blown away, and I wasn't. And I think that's okay, because it was in some ways a more, not subdued, but it was, like we talked about, like there weren't these frequent jump scares. I mean, we had the practical effects, we had some grotesque imagery and disturbing things happening, but at the same time, like it was very, not cerebral, but it just kind of gets under your skin.
Mm-hmm.
And I like when movies do that, because it doesn't happen very often, where there's just something that it becomes invasive, and it just kind of, it's like a stain on your hand. It just lingers for a while. And so that's something I think the film did really well. And I think that is what I remember most about seeing it for the first time.
It's really interesting comparing it back to that story from 10 years ago.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy.
I assume she was okay at the end of it.
Yeah, she was fine. She was just lightheaded and passed out. But just this big crowd reacting in that way, that their impulse was to record it, and uh, and something, and I'll get this out of the way, but since we're talking about kind of that dynamic being, early on in the film, Mia is trying to talk to Jade about seeing that kangaroo on the road, and of course Jade is on her phone and is distracted, ignoring her, and Mia calls her out, and I'm like, yeah, put away your phone and listen to your friend, but just this idea, like, of the party game, and use the possession as kind of the drug stand-in. It's like the camera phone, because I think we need to kind of get this out of the way before we continue, but the camera phone, it becomes this kind of shield, or like this barrier that allows people to become non-participant observers, like there's no consequence because they're not really involved, they're just watching.
Yeah.
And they can also ride that thrill of the experience without taking part in it, being accountable in any way. Or rather, I think, the events of this film brings that into question. And since this film deals with grief and trauma, the camera phone itself allows one to disassociate, and disconnect from the world. And it's like when they're recording this stuff, or when they're, participating in this, they're essentially watching it through another eye, that's not their own, through this lens. And so they don't have to experience it for themselves. Like, they can be very passive, a passive observer rather than an active participant in the situation. So there's something there when it comes to grief and trauma, and how we can put that, that buffer between us and whatever it is we're observing. Now, the last thing I want to mention is that, through this act, they're documenting it at the same time. They're preserving it as fodder to be shared and distributed, either for attention, for clicks or likes, or to be the first to share it, or whatever. But those moments are reduced to content, for entertainment, for a distraction. But it's like the possession, is it fake? Is it just a trick? Is it just engagement bait, or is it a means of humiliation? So just all of those things, that dynamic kind of creates this framework that this film kind of works within, and kind of the big picture, top down stuff. And so anyway, I just wanted to kind of get that out there.
Yeah. I think what you're saying is probably really well demonstrated in the opening scenes of the film, right?
Oh, absolutely.
We've got this party, and we've got this young bloke locked in a room. Obviously, he's had experience with the hand and held onto it for too long. So the rules of engagement, tell me if I'm wrong, Brandon, is you hold onto the hand, you light a candle, you hold onto the hand, you say, talk to me, and then you say, let me in. And then you basically have 90 seconds to have the experience. And at the end of the experience, you let go, or someone pulls the hand away, and you blow out the candle. And that's supposed to be. And it sounds like this is what I like about this movie. It's such one of those things, like when you were younger, I know I did, you'd always know someone that had a Ouija board or something like that. And there was all these like almost urban legends about, you do this and then you do this, or the Bloody Mary thing, and
you got to do this 3 times.
Do this 3 times, and this is going to happen, right? And this is like one of these kind of, urban legends that they've created this movie from, and I think it's really interesting. Instead of a Ouija board or staring at the mirror, they've got this, this hand that apparently is, I don't know, has some sort of stuff cast over it, but apparently on the inside, it's a mummified hand of somebody that lived at some stage, and they weren't sure if it was, I think, a Satanist or some sort of cleric or something like that. And so you've got all these stories swirling around. So you have this opening scene where, obviously the brother of this guy has been using it for way too long, and is having a session, and he's his brother's trying to get him out of his room, brings him out, and he just straight up stabs his brother and then stabs himself in the head, which is shocking. And the way it's shot, I love the way it's shot, because you're not, in a lot of films, they would pull right up close to that guy stabbing himself in the face and make it as graphic as possible. But this is like, and I think this goes back to what you're talking about. At this stage, you're almost like the observer, because you're standing back as far as somebody might be at a party like that, just watching this happen. And
yeah, that's true.
And that's the feeling I got when I was watching it. And at the same time, just before he does that, all you can see in the background are phone camera lights.
Yeah.
It's just, it's done really well. And I think that's one of the things that works great in this film is they really nail the kind of teen lifestyle of this point in time in society, which is all about, they use Snapchat in the film. And
right. Yeah.
Apparently they had to get permission for that, right? And of course, and they had to get permission for Apple to have iPhones in the film and stuff like that. And which is quite interesting. I mean, I've always figured that was the case, but it's interesting when they were talking about it on the commentary. Oh, we had to get permission for this, we had to get permission for that, and we never thought we could afford the Sia song that they're singing in the car, and she just said they could have it and stuff like that. And so it's a really interesting start to the movie, and the voyeurism and the, like you said, and your story also reminded me, when you were talking about being disconnected from what's in front of you, reminds me of an old Tom Savini story, the makeup artist, where he learned a lot of what he did with makeup when he was a photographer in Vietnam.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And he was saying that he looked at everything through the lens, so he was kind of disconnected from the whole thing as well. I think it still fucked him up a bit. Like, I think Vietnam fucked a lot of people up, but he was saying he felt disconnected from what he was seeing based on that as well. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, because it is the lens, kind of being like you are kind of, on the other side of the screen. It's like there's this kind of membrane between you and what you're observing, and it offers you some protection or, some feeling of safety, because, it's like you are, I don't know, you're so distant from it in some way. And so I don't know, I just, when you were talking about what Tom Savini said, because you're absolutely right. Like, he was talking about how much you learn from what he observed, as a war photographer, and just kind of being able to separate yourself from separate the reality from the image you're creating, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. I like that.
Like you said, the whole film is based around kids filming stuff. And it's quite amazing. And it's so typical of what people would do. Like, they would, even at my age, right? I'm 62. If I was somewhere where this is going on, I'm probably getting my phone out. Right?
Yeah, I probably would be too. And part of me, and I'm glad that we can admit that, because I remember when I first saw the film and when I rewatched it in preparation for the show, I was thinking the thing about the film that I guess was hard for me to buy into is because I'm a professor and I work with a lot of young people. It's like, it's just young people doing stupid shit, they're just getting into mischief. And,
I think one of my notes here was around the use of technology, and I just put teens doing teen things.
Yeah.
Right? and some of the reviews,
damn kids.
Yeah. I'll go and shout at some clouds outside. And and some of the reviews I listened to and watched on YouTube, a lot of it was a lot of enjoyment, or a lot of people got into the film because of the portrayal of the kids. And a few people said, and I'm not dissing on America, but a few people said if this was like an American film, they would have all the stereotypes out there. And whereas this was just like a bunch of kids doing kids stuff, right? And I would say for a lot of this, especially with extras and stuff like that, they've probably pulled in people that were in their videos on YouTube, and God knows how many people they used. Yeah, I thought it was really quite realistic. Onto the cast, I thought that Sophie Wilde she carries the whole film, right? The whole film depends on her performance, and I thought her performance was fantastic. And I actually thought all the cast were great.
They all really quite stellar and very authentic. Like, I think the acting too was I don't know, this sounds very simplistic, but it was very believable, very naturalistic in a way that, like, you felt like these were real young people, that they weren't, like you said, they weren't some kind of stereotype, or like, oh, this is, we got the nerd here and we got the jock and the sickly girl and the cheerleader or whatever,
It was great to actually see Miranda Otto in this as well. I thought she played a good part. I think she was really good as the mum. It's obviously a single mum trying to deal with the kids. And I wanted to shout out Joe Bird, who plays Riley, because that guy goes through a lot of shit in this film.
He sure does. No. Yeah. He's a real trooper.
Yeah. So the film opens with the party, and it kind of sets the scene. Then, I won't do this scene by scene by scene, but then, we eventually get to a point where we find out about Mia's mum passing away. I think it was a year or two ago.
Yeah, it's 2 years, 2-year anniversary.
Yeah. And I think that's, part of this film is all about how grief is, people handle grief, and wanting to see her mum again. And when the spirits latch onto her later, they kind of, I don't think it's ever her mother that she sees. I think it's something else, right?
She's grieving, and she's like she's on that path of like finding her strength again, but it also, at the same time, she's vulnerable, not just vulnerable to bad influence, but to malevolent spirits who are trying to corrupt her ability to find closure, because she has so many questions around the death of her mother. And was it an intentional suicide, or was it an accident, or was it something else?
Yeah, and her father's not always straight up with her about what happened. So there's that there as well.
Right.
Yeah, so she's really open. She makes some really bad decisions in this film. But I think obviously she has to for the plot to progress, but also I think they're quite believable for someone that's in grief like that, and really, like the whole reason that Riley has such a bad time of it is because she believes it's her mother talking to her through Riley. So she wants to keep him in that state, which they go way past the 90 seconds. And if you notice at the end of all the kerfuffle with Riley, the candle's still burning as well, right? So they haven't blown the candle out. So, so she's really susceptible, as you were saying, to all this sort of stuff, and the fact that she's under this pressure and she's this stress that she's in, and the grief. That's why I think it's believable she makes so many dumb decisions, some really dumb decisions.
I don't know, did you get the sense that she was, because her friend Jade, and like the relationship she has with Jade and Riley and their mother, like it seemed like she was kind of almost like she was part of, or trying to be part of, that family unit.
Yeah. And Sue is almost her surrogate mother.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, she very much does. Like, it seems like she spends most of it, she lives at the house, most likely.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like she goes home very often. And her father's obviously dealing with the grief as well. So it's kind of split their relationship as well. She doesn't have a very good relationship with the father. And I think it's mainly because, like I said, I don't think he's been too straight up with her about what really happened, or maybe he doesn't really know what happened either. And he's trying to deal with that as well. So we go on to scenes like the first scene where Mia decides that she's going to She's going to go through the experience, and the experience is really interesting. And I think her acting in that scene is great. And I just love watching like the way they've got the way they're all standing around her, giving her advice, telling her how to do it, and all this. It's very realistic, I think, and also the way when she first holds the hand and then sees the image of I think it's like an old man, and she pulls the hand away. When I was watching the commentary, the guy who played the old man, he was in that just for like that 3 seconds of screen time. A lot of this was shot during COVID. He had to fly in to Adelaide, be locked away for 3 days, basically, to make sure that he was, okay from COVID point of view. He came on the set. He was working for it turns out probably less than an hour. Then he flew home, and then he had to quarantine for 3 more days at the end. So he was in the movie for 5 seconds. I think he's in it's not even 5 seconds he's on screen for.
It's mere seconds. Yeah.
Yeah, it's mere seconds. And the second vision she sees looks like a drowning victim, right? And then when she sees her mother in all the other scenes, her mother's always looks like she's wet.
Yeah, I wondered about that. But
so it makes me think that the spirit that she first had contact with after she pulled her hand away the first time seemed to be the spirit that had kind of latched onto her a bit, because her mother didn't drown. So why is there always water? And when her mother's in the scene, there's always like a slushing sort of watery sound as well. So I think that's a giveaway that it's actually not her mother she's seeing, but she thinks it's her mother.
Yeah. Interesting. I didn't notice that sound, but yeah.
The sound design in this movie is fantastic as well. It's really good.
Yeah, I mean, all the breathing and stuff, the low drones that we kind of get. When the first guy stabs himself in the face, like that sound effect sells it. It's far enough away that we don't really see, the knife go into his face, but just that motion and that sound effect just really sell it.
A lot of the sound design reminded me that, because a movie I saw recently with Jay, actually, when he was in Australia last year, was we went and saw Evil Dead Rise. And I don't know if you've seen that.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen it.
The sound design in that is fantastic. It's unbelievable, especially in the cinema. It was amazing. It reminded me a little bit of that. The sound design and the way the music worked with the sound design was just so good. It's really, I think that's what, like you were saying, there's this absolutely no jump scares in this film at all. There's not one, I don't think.
Yeah.
I can't think of one. The only other recent movie we talked about in this podcast recently was Lake Mungo. And that only has one jump scare in the whole film. And it's kind of the same in the way that it's more about building a sense of dread and an uneasiness in you. And I think that's what works in this film. And the way they've used sound and the music together is kind of really has a lot to do with that. Of course, I mean, if you're watching just rushes of this film without the sound effects and without the music, it would be very plain, of course, as any movie would be.
You got to have a great sound design, but there are so many movies that over the years have relied so heavily on jump scares and those stingers, to punctuate moments that they want the audience to be afraid of and to react to. And I like it when films don't kind of tell you oh, this is the scary moment.
Yeah.
This is, or here's the little thing that's going to pop out. I don't know. That just seems very cheap.
I haven't seen the second one, but I saw the first movie, The Nun. Have you seen that?
Yeah, I've seen the first one.
And that's just all jumps. It's just all jump scares.
Yeah.
All those movies.
The whole Conjuring universe.
They're all jump scares. And I mean, they're obviously made for an audience. I mean, jump scares probably work best with an audience of teens, right? And things like that, because it's fun. But I find now, maybe just because I'm older or I've seen more movies, I find that jump scares kind of take me out of the movie sometimes.
Yeah.
Because you sort of jump and then you kind of collect yourself. And when you're collecting yourself, you're not really invested in the film.
Yeah, I agree. I tend to now I don't like films that are like a roller coaster in that way, like where it feels like it's just like an amusement park kind of ride. I like films that kind of bury you in a mood and keep you there, and because that's a place that it eventually will hopefully take you out of. But this kind of goes back to what you said earlier about the hand holding thing or spoon feeding the audience. I think a lot of particularly, and I'll say, a lot of most American commercial films do that because they don't trust the audience.
Well, they actually said in the commentary at one point they wanted to trust the audience to understand what was going on, and they just left enough breadcrumbs for people to be able to follow the story.
Yes.
And there's no need to be spoon-fed everything, right? And some films do that really badly, like give you everything.
Oh, I can't stand it. Yeah.
Even when they're talking about the hand in this film, they're not really saying, like someone says, oh, where did you get it from? Oh, I got it from some guy who got it from some guy. That's all you need to know.
That's all you need, yeah.
You don't need to know it came from some ancient burial ground and some, I'm like you said before, I'm hoping the sequels or the prequels or whatever don't go there. I think the hand is great just to have. It's one of those things you could build on that. The only thing I can see is it'll get to a point eventually where all the movies are the same. So they kind of have to do something, I guess.
Yeah.
I can see a prequel working. I'm even concerned then that we will get like a major origin story, and I don't really want that.
Well, we will see.
Speaking of disturbing scenes, there's a very disturbing scene with the dog in this film. Mia's ex, he has his experience with the hand, and he gets someone else kind of possess him, and he ends up having almost like a sexual encounter where he's kind of writhing on the floor, and it looks like he's basically having sex with the floor for a minute.
Right.
And then the dog comes over and starts licking his face, and then he starts kind of making out with the dog. It's gross. And typical of this sort of thing, the people around him in the film, they're all thinking this is amazing, fantastic.
Right.
And they're all in there with the cameras, of course. And at the end of it all, he wants them to delete it. And they're like, no way, we're not deleting this sort of thing, right? And once again, that goes back to that whole thing about everything being filmed, and you're not necessarily in control of what happens to that media,
I liked the attention to detail because when he comes out of it and he's standing up, you can see all the dog slobber on his mouth and the dog hair stuck to his face. So that's
they used a prosthetic dog head. Did you realize that?
Oh no.
So they actually,
I was wondering.
in some of the behind the scenes on the Blu-ray, there's a little bit where it's just like a puppeted head. It's basically covers most of the hand of the guy doing it. It's just like one of those, things, but it looks quite realistic. And that's what they used, because there's no way you're gonna make out with a real dog. But this is the part of the film where we get this sort of grossness, and then they get rid of the dog, and and he gets possessed again, and then we get the bit with Riley when he wants to do it, and his sister keeps saying no, and she's probably the only person in this film that's kind of sensible in that regard with her brother.
Yeah.
She's like, no, he's so young. I think he's 13 or 14 years old. But of course, he, I think, is a little bit motivated by wanting to be one of the guys and wanting to kind of, show that he can do that as 13-year-olds do and 14-year-olds do.
Well, peer pressure is certainly a big theme here, and they establish that whenever Riley and his friend are sitting on the curb and his friend offers him a cigarette, and he's going, I don't smoke. Just that idea of, not wanting to be seen as a wimp, that I can handle it, I can do this. So just that, I mean, you can kind of see the germ of Riley's need to be to be seen as part of, but also capable. He's not he's not a kid, even though he is, but he can handle it.
Well, even his friend says to him, I think I need to find a new friend in that scene.
Oh, yeah.
So he's obviously got this pressure on him, right? And that's why he wants to do it. Of course, Mia fucks it up because they were like the agreement, I think, was it 40 seconds or 50 seconds they were going to have him do, and then they were going to stop it.
I think it was 50, yeah.
And the scene is excruciating to watch. It's like, it's the only bit of full-on gore, I think, in the film. And
yeah.
The way that it's totally unexpected. I remember the first time I saw it, the first time he smashes his head on the desk in front of him, the table in front of him, it's like shocking, right? It's like, shit, I didn't expect that. And then he keeps doing it. And then he tries to pull his eye out of his eye socket, which is gross.
Yeah, it's gruesome. It's a pretty gory film.
In some ways, yeah.
Especially with Riley, because he's always like trying to hurt himself in some way, the possessed Riley.
Yeah. I wonder what the reason is for that, though. Like, why? It's obviously the spirit that's doing it, but why would the spirit be doing that? Is it to really get at Mia in some way? Or is it just that he's got some bad spirit inside of him?
I was thinking about this today, and it seems like they kind of get at this at the end whenever Mia has Riley in the wheelchair on the side of the road, and the spirit that has taken the form of her mother that's telling her to essentially push him out into traffic. It seems like that they have a hold on his spirit, but they can't have it permanently until he dies. So I don't know that's all I can really.
That's all I can think of too. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe that's why he's always trying to hurt and kill himself. And so I don't know.
Well, there's that scene where she gets that little. Remember, she holds the hand, I think, in the hospital, and there's that little scene of him being kind of like covered by all these people writhing around. It looks like hell.
Yeah, it's a very like Nightmare on Elm Street kind of image, like with
Apparently, they shot a lot more of that. We're told if you actually want this to get through the ratings board, you have to cut it like massively.
Oh.
The Riley thing is really interesting, and the way that her mother is, or not her mother, but the spirit is kind of manipulating Mia into thinking her mother. Like she manipulates her into wanting to kill Riley to release him. But I'm not sure if that's Mia's kind of like, I think she's sort of pushed into that position where she kind of feels like I have to kill him to release him. And,
right.
And we didn't mention the kangaroo at the start of the film.
Oh,
because
right.
it comes back a bit later on where they hit a kangaroo when they're driving. Mia's driving Riley home from something, and they hit a kangaroo, and the kangaroo is kind of just like on the road. It's still alive, but obviously not going to live. And Riley's like says to Mia, "Why don't you run over it just to finish it off?" And she just can't bring herself to do it. And I think at the end of the film where she's going to kill Riley with the scissors, then she has this vision of like a kangaroo in the hallway of the hospital as well, which is interesting as well, because she doesn't go ahead with it, but instead she rolls him out in a wheelchair to push him out into the street, which I think's worse. Yeah.
It seems almost fitting that's where she would do it. Again, thinking about the kangaroo, it's like this is like she can give mercy to that kangaroo in a way by going through with something she wasn't willing to do earlier in that space. I don't know. There's something there too. I think it's interesting.
Well, they even manipulate her so far as to kill her father. Well, I don't know if he's actually really dies, right? But she has this, there's a scene where she's in her room with the hand and has the banging on the door, and it's like awful vision of a father attacking her when no one's really there, and her father's trying to get into the room because he can hear all this kerfuffle inside. And when he eventually comes in, she mistakes him for the spirit or whatever it is and kills or stabs him in the neck,
Right.
which is quite a shocking scene as well. There's a lot of stuff. We're not even thinking about the foot sucking.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Which is so uncomfortable to watch. That whole scene where she's in her room with whatever the guy's name is, and she's like lying at the opposite end of the bed, maybe because they're trying to not be too close because he's the ex and they're supposed to be just friends sort of thing. And
Right.
she has a vision of this spirit sucking on the foot of the guy, and when she comes out of it all, it's her. And it's so gross. I don't know why they decided to go with foot sucking. Maybe because it is gross.
I guess so. Yeah. Like the dog. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really weird pseudo-sexual kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
It's strange.
Yeah, that's interesting.
But I guess we should talk down about the ending because we eventually go through all these periods. Riley's fucked up totally. Even in hospital, there's a bit where he tries. I can't remember now. Does she actually trigger that by holding his hand or putting his hand on the hand? I can't remember. But there's a bit where he basically bites into his own wound on his arm.
Right.
And then falls off the bed and starts smashing the back of his head into the tiled wall as well.
Yeah.
And then he starts licking the blood as it's running away. It's that poor guy having to act.
I know.
It's pretty gross. He'd probably do well in an Evil Dead movie.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. He gets really fucked up. Anyway, so she decides like, okay, I have to kill him. I have to end his life to release him or something like that. But like you said or alluded to, I think that's kind of what the spirits want.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, just do it and then he'll be with us forever.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
And your mother will be back for some weird reason. And
oh, sure. Yeah.
And so she goes through this great ruse. And the way they shot it, I thought was great. They had this super close-up of her calling her friend and telling her to come around to the house or something like that because she's at the hospital with Riley. So she gets in a car and drives over to her house, which obviously must be, 20 minutes away or something like that. And then all of a sudden we see that Mia's in the car park. So the way they shot that was really good because you didn't know where she was calling from, and it was quite well done, I think. She's effectively gets Riley in a wheelchair and wheels him to the roadway and is going to basically push him on the road. And for some reason, at the very last second, she doesn't do it. Now, I'm not sure if it's kind of she had this clarity or something because there's that last second where the spirit of her mother, inverted commas, leans over and says to her, "I'm proud of you," which is kind of the spirit, I guess, saying, yeah, we're really happy you're doing this, right? But then she doesn't go through with it. And then all of a sudden you hit this crash and you're not sure exactly what happened. And then you see Mia lying on the road, right? And so I don't know if she's put herself on the road or whether what's happened.
Yeah,
So,
I'm not sure either.
Yeah, but there she is lying on the road, and then we have the scenes in the hospital, and this is where we're getting into major spoiler territory. So if you haven't watched it, really need to go and watch it. Where she starts walking through the hospital and she sees Riley there, and then she sees Riley again packing all his stuff up and going home with his mother and sister, and obviously is okay. Then she sees visions of her father in a lift and things like that. She walks in to a bathroom or something and looks in a mirror and can't see a reflection, which is a callback to earlier in the movie where she's talking about a dream she has where she can't see her own reflection. And it was at that point, I think I was thinking, and I probably should have thought it earlier, I was like, oh, she's dead. Right?
Yeah.
And because it just put me back to the old vampire thing, you can't see your own reflection, right? Because you're
right. Yeah.
The bit I love the most, which still comes out of the blue, even if you kind of think she's dead, is she goes, there's like all this darkness around her and she sees this white light and she goes towards the light and all of a sudden this hand comes out and holds onto her hand and it's somebody else that's conjuring, basically conjuring her up from the spirit world. And that's the end of the movie. And I thought it was a really good ending.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I like movies that end ambiguously, but I also love movies that tie up all the loose ends and provide like real closure to the narrative, but in a satisfying way. And I like this ending a lot because the tables kind of turn here, and the movie does that a few different ways. But just I'm thinking about now Mia, now that she's dead, like she's now the genie in the bottle, so to speak. She's the one that's caged and going to be used as a party trick, right?
Yeah.
And it's like the idea of like the abuser becoming the abused, or the one being exploited, the clown who's being made to dance. That's interesting.
I think it's a really good ending. Actually, I found it quite satisfying.
That's the word I was looking for. It was a satisfying ending, and it wasn't presented to us as like a gotcha, like a twist, like, oh, I bet you didn't see this coming. It wasn't. There wasn't a lot of fanfare around it, or it wasn't presented to us in a way that was heightened. It was just that sea of darkness and that light that she was drawn to, and then found herself kind of on the other side of the table. And I like how simply that was done, but in a very evocative but beautiful sort of way.
And it kind of just closes the whole loop, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
So on to the hype of this movie. This movie was massively hyped, as many movies are these days. So how did you feel? As I think you've already kind of given your answer a little bit, like, do you feel like when a movie is super hyped that it changes your perception of the movie when you start watching it, or it changes what you think about the movie when you've finished watching it?
I don't know. I'm a little torn. I was trying to think of some recent examples of movies that were hyped and kind of what my reactions were, but I feel like, because if a movie's really hyped, like it's setting a bar, and sometimes like, yeah, we'll get it's the scariest movie of the year, and you're like, yeah, we've heard that before. So you just kind of take that with a grain of salt. But when everyone's talking about it, like, oh, you've got to go see this. Oh my gosh. Like, I couldn't believe it. Like, or movies that, are like big awards films like Barbie or Oppenheimer, which I'm glad that's all over, because I'm tired of hearing about both of them, even though I liked both films a lot. But I'm like, oh my gosh, just the awards fatigue is still there. But anyway, but I was going to say is it does affect your expectations going in. And if it doesn't meet or exceed those expectations, I mean, you're going to have a bad time. And there have been films, I'll give you one example, and this is kind of an internal hype factor. And I'll explain what that means. So like when I saw the most recent Scream film, in the opening of that was so different than what we had seen before. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is, I don't know what to think about this.
Yeah, I loved it.
Yeah. And the way it ends, that cold open ends, with Ghostface saying, who gives a fuck about the movies? And I was like, holy shit, like this is going to be totally different. I don't even know what I'm in for. And then at the end, I was like, this ending was really a letdown. But anyway, that opening really hyped me up and established my expectations. And so I was like, I know I'm going in for something that's really different, and I don't know what I'm in for, and I'm excited about it. So I like when movies, I like when it's, the hype is justified, I guess. I mean, even if I don't like the film, if I feel like the hype was worth it, like it was worth talking about, I don't know. It feels like, yeah, okay, that's fine. Uh, but I don't trust the marketing machine at all these days. I mean, I actually despise most modern movie trailers too, because they're overhyped and they give away this is like a 3-minute version of the movie.
I know they
But
give away so much.
I know, but I digress. But I I like when movies are sincere in how they are establishing your expectations, and I'm not sure that the scariest movie of the year thing was effective, but the thing that made it worth the hype was that it was an A24 film, and they carry a lot of credibility because of the quality of their work. And it does, I will say this, I'll end this by saying, yes, it belongs in the catalog of A24, it's body of work, because it is a high quality film, and it does push the envelope. It does things differently, and it's not just a run of the mill horror film or supernatural horror film. So yeah, so I feel like, yes, the hype was legit.
Yeah, I always find hype really interesting. Another recent one that I can think of, another funnily enough Australian movie, Late Night with the Devil. Have you seen that?
Yes, I liked that.
That was overhyped, not overhyped, but that was super hyped up by
Yes,
the
it was.
and
It
I
was.
really liked it. And
Yeah.
Umbrella are just releasing. I've just bought another $160, or whatever it was, the whole thing, and they've actually got like a VHS with it that you can actually
that's
play
cool.
that has footage from the film and stuff on it. And
that's awesome.
yeah, so that's all coming soon. And I found that was another movie. I don't know if we'll cover it on here, but we might one day. But that's another movie that was really hyped up, and I watched it. I missed it at the movies because it had fairly limited release here. For me to go and see it, I would have had to drive about an hour, and I just didn't have time at the time. And then I found out it was on Shudder, and then I thought, oh, it's not on Australian Shudder, but that's okay. I've got a VPN. So I watched it a few weeks ago with May, and we kind of really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. But to me, the hype was a little overdone. And I think this one's actually the better movie, Talk to Me. But the other ones, they're both very different movies, though. I just think this was really good. And the hype, yeah, I don't like hype with movies, so I just last night while I was lying in bed, I was scanning through what movies are coming up soon. I was like, oh, Furiosa is on in a few weeks. So I jumped on, I bought tickets to that. And then I thought to myself, right, I'm not going to watch one trailer if I can help it. And I'm going to try not to read anything about it until I've seen it. And because I know it's already hyped, right?
Oh, yeah. And everyone's talking about it.
Yeah, although the reviews are really good. And we can talk about it. Here's an Australian film. And and it looks like it's going to be a fantastic movie. So and
I'm very excited about it.
I can't wait. I'm really looking forward to it. So it should be good. Yeah, but I think the whole thing with hype and, I don't know. It is a concern. And moving on to hype, from hype to other hype, this is obviously a supernatural movie, although it has some drama and horror elements in it as well. And I was thinking the other day, how does this sit with other supernatural movies of recent years? And in most cases, I think it's probably better, because when you think supernatural movies of recent years, what are you thinking? Conjuring. What's the one where they have the cameras set up all around the house?
Oh, like Paranormal Activity.
Paranormal Activity, all those sort of things. I think as far as if you stack it up with any of those films, I still think it's a much better film than any of those films. Although I like the original Conjuring. I think it's good. But I think it's just a little better than most of those. I don't know. Supernatural, the past, Yeah, there's a few, but I noticed there's another supernatural film at the movies at the moment. Is it Tarot or whatever it is, and it's based
Oh,
on
yeah.
tarot, but it's getting absolutely panned. I was going to go and see it. I saw a trailer for it. Well, I went and saw the first Omen a few weeks ago, which is
How
really
was that?
great. It's really
Yeah.
great, really good. Has some jump scares, but the jump scares are in the right place and they're not overdone. And it's a really good prequel. And anyway, I saw the shorts for this tarot movie, and I thought, oh my god, this is just like, it was almost like, I think the premise is something about they get these tarot cards from somewhere that they shouldn't have or something like that, and the cards sort of show the way that each of the characters is going to die or something, right? And I'm like, oh, this is just like a retooling of Final Destination.
Right. That's what I was thinking.
So I didn't see it, and the reviews are like, it's been panned. It's probably a good one for streaming later, like just leave your brain at the door and have a good time, maybe. So there's quite a few good horror movies in the Abigail. I haven't caught up with that yet. That looks
Yeah, I haven't
good.
seen that one
It
either.
actually looks really good. So
Yeah.
it's a pretty good time for horror at the moment, actually.
Yeah, I haven't seen, I can't think of the last one I've seen, well, besides Late Night with the Devil, but it's been a while.
I think it stacks up pretty well against some of the other supernatural movies, because I never like Paranormal Activity, because once again, it's just a jump scare fest and pretty boring when you think of it.
Yeah, it can be kind of dull because a lot of what you're watching is just very mundane domestic life. And then some weird shit happens. And then you're back to,
It's definitely supernatural, but I think it stacks up really well with supernatural movies of the past. I think it's pretty good, actually.
Well, it dares to do something a little bit different, or at least do it in a different way. And that was really refreshing, with it being a genre film. Or, you could like just look at your watch and be like, okay, we're at the 20-minute mark, and these are the things that
are going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so true.
So
true.
Yeah. So even though, it has, it has structure, but it's not everything was. Well, it has nothing to do with predictability, I guess. It's more that like you become invested because you're like, I'm just interested. From a conceptual point of view, like just being possessed as a way of kind of socially getting high. It was like, that's really different and
it's
interesting.
a great concept, actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's instead of going to a party where everyone passes a bong around, everyone's passing a hand around this time.
Even though we have these conversations in the movie about, using cigarettes, or, you better not be drinking and things like that. At least we're not doing drugs, but it's that idea. It's like, it's kind of the stand-in for recreational drugs. Even the language that Mia was using when she is telling Riley what it was like. She said, it felt amazing. Like I was glowing, like I was in the passenger seat. It felt incredible. It's like, it's that same kind of transformative experience, to feel different, to disentangle ourselves from reality, so just, that was pretty cool.
Any final thoughts on the film? You recommend the film?
I would recommend the film. I like it. There's a lot of kind of big picture stuff that's worth looking at and kind of zooming in on, when just from a social and cultural point of view. It's a great film. It's a tight 95 minutes. There's not a lot of exposition. Yeah, even the way the film ends, it's like, this is gonna keep happening. We've seen that before. Evil never dies, right? But it's much like, this film's concerned with life and death and grief and trauma. It's cyclical, but it's like this thing that's happening around this hand will persist, or it will endure. And I think the act of using the hand, as a means of possession, it's interesting because it's, it's entertainment, but for young people, but in a way, I could be wrong. You could tell me what you think, but it may be something that the film may be saying to me is that the scary thing isn't really the unknown, the supernatural entities or whatever. It's, it's us, or it's human behavior, or the corruption of human behavior, and how we corrupt and abuse things that were previously shown as scary or harmful to us. So that's a turning of the tables a bit too. Like, tiny digression, I was thinking just now about, it was, I can't remember who pitched this, but it was a Nightmare on Elm Street sequel that never got off the ground. It was just a pitch, but it was that it would be like in the future, and kids were, because Freddy is weakened in the dream world, and kids were going into the dream world to abuse Freddy because he was weakened, and it was about him finding enough power to come back at them. But not that he was the hero of the story, but anyway, but that idea of turning the tables in a way and making the boogeyman kind of the puppet in a way. I don't know. I just thought that was really unique and original. And so I applaud the filmmakers for taking some bold steps, and I'm glad that they got this widely distributed.
So, Brandon, what's happening in your world at the moment? I think we chatted a little bit before we started recording.
Oh yeah,
a bit quiet on the podcast front.
Yeah, a bit quiet on the podcast front. I've been, as I've mentioned this on the two shows of which I'm a part, Vericon Video and the Gory Picture Show, which are kind of on a break right now, an indefinite break. I have been with my job very busy. I have a lot of commitments. It's just taken a lot of my time and resources. So I am hoping to get back into it very soon, since I have a lot more time on my plate, or have a lot less on my plate and free time to hopefully do some podcasting this summer.
That'd be good. Gory Picture Shows. Great. What was the last episode you did of that? I did listen to it.
Oh shoot! I've already. Was it Nightmare Sisters?
Something like that. Yeah, they're always fun because they're always really great, like movies that not many people have heard of. Cases. So.
Oh, I know. That's what I like about it. And it's usually Lewis saying, like, have you heard of this movie? And I'm like, no, but let's do it. And it's something like necromantic.
Yeah.
What
was the one I listened to the podcast. I thought, I've got to watch it. What was the one about the guy? He was in New York City, I think. Was it something? Was it Butcher Baker Nightmare Maker or something like that?
Butcher Baker Nightmare Maker is one of my favorites we've done. It's really good. It just got a 4K release from Severin.
It's amazing they have these movies that hardly anyone's seen, and they give them 4K releases. It's amazing.
I know. It's like, how did they even find like a print of this obscure movie?
The thing is, though, it's a collector's market now, right? Like,
oh, right, yeah.
Traditionally, people that would traditionally buy media don't buy it anymore. Like, you're seeing it in retail. You're seeing less discs in retail. There's still quite a few I see at my local JB Hi-Fi. They still have quite a decent amount, but some of the stores, the JB Hi-Fi stores, I'm hearing are cutting back or cutting out physical media altogether, which is really sad, especially when they're also quite happy to sell vinyl LPs now.
Yeah.
Right. Which is quite odd. So I think it's amazing that it's really, and I think in a way it's good, because yes, all these editions, like the one we talked about for Talk to Me, $160, or the Late Night with the Devil, which I think was about the same price, right? These things fairly expensive, but they're catering to a market that's passionate about physical media and wanting to have physical media. And I think it's fantastic that, that's available for people, and companies like Severin, Umbrella.
Yeah.
Who do I buy stuff from quite a bit? Arrow.
Arrow.
Always
Kino
have some,
Lorber.
yeah, they always have great stuff. I got Rollerball from Arrow, the original one with James Caan.
Yeah.
Oh, such a great
I've
movie.
never seen it.
It's so good. It's so
Yeah.
good. Yeah, it's great.
I
It's
think-
very 70s.
Nice. I think it might be Arrow or Kino. I can't remember, but there's a 4K someone has that's on sale right now, and I thought about picking it up. So maybe I will.
Yeah. I just bought a 4K set from Arrow for all the Psycho films. I think they're all in 4K. And
Oh yeah.
and it was a nice set. So yeah, it's pretty good. The only thing with the Arrow stuff, it's pretty expensive for me because of the exchange rate. So but all their stuff, because it's a British company, all their stuff's in the same region for me, so I can buy it without having to worry about it. Whereas if I see stuff on Shout Factory, it's probably not going to work because they even with 4K, they region lock it, which is a bummer.
That's a bummer.
So, but anyway, but so that's it. Any socials you want to share?
If you like, you can follow me on X, the app formerly known as Twitter.
It used to be good.
The Brandon Hardy. Yeah, it used to be good. Used to be great. Now it's kind of a graveyard.
All right. Well, thank you so much for Brandon. Thank you so much, Brandon, for coming onto the show. I appreciate it. It's great having you on. It's been so long. Maybe we'll try and sneak another one in before you get back to work.
Yeah, please. Yeah, I'm ready. Yeah. Just let me know and we'll do it again.
Sounds great. Well, thanks for coming on, and good to see you again.
Yeah, you too.
And when we return, we'll see what's coming up next.
And now, preview time. When it comes to entertainment, you can't beat a good film. So let's take a look at what's coming your way.
I know nothing about politics, Senator. But I do know about magic. And I know there are powers at work in the universe. To those higher powers, the dematerialization of a given target would be child's play.
A top politician disappears without trace. An accident or assassination? Mommy! A dying child recovers without reason.
To die? To rot?
A miracle or fraud? Only the Harlequin knows the answer.
In old Italian comedy, the Harlequin couldn't be seen by other characters, only by members of the audience. It's moved.
The senator fears him. The woman loves him. The manipulator wants to destroy him.
There is the edge. Only the wind separates you from the rocks. What do you feel?
I think you push people into the deep end.
The deep end is always with you. All you have to do is fall.
Alice! In our own house, Alice, right? Now, was that before or after he slept with you?
I'll hold him. I'll hold him if I have to nail his hands to the wall.
Harlequin. He's the ultimate paradox. Find him, and he isn't there. Kill him, and he will not die. He's the man with the power over mind and matter. Love and hate. Life and death. Harlequin. Is he the new Messiah or a demon from another world?
Thanks for taking the time to listen to this episode of A Dingo Ate My Movie. I want to thank all my guests who give their time to make this podcast possible, and a special thanks to you for listening. Don't forget, you can follow A Dingo Ate My Movie on social media. On Twitter, it's just Dingo Movie. Facebook and Instagram is Dingo Movie Pod. And of course, you can check out our website, dingomoviepod.com. So until next time, stay safe, and I'll see you soon.